Hello, everyone, and welcome. This evening's class is being sponsored by the ARC of Quad Cities. My name is Mary Heil, and I'll be the coordinator for this evening. This class is Retiring for Three, a Family Affair. Our presenters this evening will be Mary Ann Ellert, President and Founder of Protected Tomorrows, Joshua Robinson and David Perry, Special Needs Advocates, PR Wealth Management Group, and Jennifer Kincaid, an attorney with Pepping, Bulk, Kincaid, and Olson. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to review. We ask that everyone keep your video and microphones off for the duration of the presentation. Access to this presentation will be locked 5 minutes into it, and you will not be able to reconnect once you're disconnected. The class is being recorded, and you will be able to view it once it has been placed on the website. I'd like to bring your attention to the bottom of your Zoom window. We ask if you have questions during the class, click on the bottom chat button and enter your questions in the dialog box located in the lower right corner of the screen and press enter. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. And now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mary Ann Ellert.
Hello, everyone. It is nice to see you again. After last month's class, we had a good time talking about the whole journey of financial planning and government planning and legal planning for your family member. And we talked about a lot of details, but this time we're going to bring the whole family in. We're going to make it a family affair to talk about the planning that needs to get done for you, mom and dad, and how you bring other professionals in to work with you as well as other family members. So some of you who don't know about Protected Tomorrows and about why we're doing this, here's the reason I started it. It's my sister, Marcia. She had cerebral palsy, and she was the one who taught me what is really important in life. She taught me that recreation and independence and feeling good about herself and her ability to have a job and do whatever she could do with her life was the best thing that she wanted for her life. And so many times when you hear me asking you, what's the best thing that you'd want for your child, it's coming from her telling me what she wanted. And watching my parents go through wanting to protect her and me as her sister wanting to push her into having a full life. So that challenge that I faced with my parents and wanting to make sure that she could do things perhaps that they wanted to protect her from was something I learned through the process of many, many years. I did lose my sister when she was 39 years old. She had a seizure in her sleep and she couldn't turn over and suffocated in her sleep. It took me a couple of years to get back on my feet after that to help families. But something I was told by one of my mentors is that I kept talking about her and all the things she taught me. So here we are. Me wanting to share my sister's story and how I learned from her so that you can make your child's the best it can be. So the other thing I've learned over the years, because we've been doing this for 30 years now, is that it's complex. When we're dealing with my background is financial. So working with families in their financial planning is complex, thinking about all the different things that are changing, especially these days, with taxes and how things are viewed from during a pandemic, which is the time we're in. If you're listening to this afterwards, I hope there's no pandemic anymore going on. But right now, it is certainly complex dealing with all the things we have to think about. So then you add into it and the planning that we have to do as parents. I'm also a parent of a child with special needs. Thinking about we have to plan for ourselves. We have to make sure we're okay, but our tendency as a parent is to take care of our family. And as a mom especially, I'll speak from that perspective. And our tendency is to be a caregiver, right? That's what we are. But we have to sometimes put ourselves first and make sure we're okay, because if we're not okay, our child's not okay. And when we're doing financial planning for people and we're doing all these different things we have to do and putting the plans in place, what we find is that it's typical. A typical financial plan for a couple will be taking care of mom and dad, making sure the kids go through college and all that's done. But when we have a child with special needs, we have to think differently. There's all these steps we have to take to make sure that our child's okay. but we have to do that for our lifetime. We don't get to walk away when our child's through with college. We have to have in our retirement plan, this is why we call it Retiring for Three tonight. We have to think about our financial plan and be sure we're okay. Then we have to feed into that the planning we've done for our child. And I call it their retirement plan, make sure they're okay. And then our retirement plan has to go beyond us. So it goes through our lifetime and then it goes beyond our lifetime. So if I'm going to live to 90 years old, I've got to plan to 30 or 40 years past my 90 years old, right? Because I have to plan beyond me. So we created a care planning program that we can think about creating the plan for your child and all the things that you have to do to make sure they're okay. And then all the things we have to do, which is what we're talking tonight, that you have to do to make sure you're okay as well. A little bit more about us is in Protected Tomorrows, we do a lot of different things for families, but I always like to share some of the fun things we do too, besides just the serious planning. So we helped organize an organization called Fails for Life. We've done a couple of these, but Fails for Life is one of my favorites. We help families apply for a service dog, and then our trainer goes out and finds the right dog and trains the puppy specifically for the child. So I just thought I'd share you for fun tonight. This is Augie, and he's a very, very special puppy that's being trained. I love him. He's so cute. Okay, so what's our mission? What's Protected Tomorrow's mission? Our mission is your mission. It's the same mission, is to make sure our child who has a special need has a safe and fulfilling life. Very simple. It's complex to do, but it's simple. So we have some tools we're going to be talking about that we're going to be using in this planning process. One of them is information on our website. So we're going to teach you some things tonight. We're not expecting you to be a graduate after this hour and a half. We are expecting you to be able to watch this again if you choose to, because it'll be recorded. But we'd like you to know where to get the tools. And on our website, there's some tools to do planning that you'll be able to, that Joshua and David will be talking about, that you can use to help you through some of the number crunching. And in that, there's also a whole family membership community where you'll be able to look at some of those tools, and as well as looking at some coaching and training sessions that you could attend to help you think through a lot of the pieces you have to do. There'll be a lot of resources and sharing with other people as well. So you'll be offered at the end of the program a code to be able to get into the family membership for free. So that would be good for a tool to use. Okay, so who are the players and how are we going to think about this tonight? First, we're going to talk about you. Then we're going to talk about your child. And then we're going to talk about the government. And then we're going to talk about the professional things you have to do, and like working with an attorney to make sure that you get the legal piece done. And then we're going to talk about tying it all together. So there's a lot of pieces here. And then at the end, we will wrap up with what are your next steps and what do you really have to put into place. So I know that some of you have done some of this and some of you have done none of this. So we're going to take one step at a time. We'll start with you and some of the things you have to do. So we're going to start with just explaining, because you could go do a retirement plan, but we're different. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and there's a form here, and we'll be able to send this to you afterwards as well if you're an attendee. So the questions that I'm going to ask is, if you're the dad of this family, are you still working? Yes or no? You the mom, are you still working? Yes or no? Who has the health insurance? Because this will be a key to something we're talking about tonight. So if you're both working and your child has a disability and you're working, is your child on your group health insurance? Because that is a really important question to ask. If our child can stay on our health insurance, at least in Illinois, and each state has different rules. I happen to be in Illinois. Our child can stay on our health insurance, our group health insurance, as long as we have it. It's for most companies. If a company is self-insured, they get to choose if they do this. But our statute in our state says that the company must do this. So every state has the rules, and wherever you work, where your company is, will set those rules. So who has the health insurance? Who's providing that if your child's under 18 or under 26 or under 35? what age do you think you will take your Social Security, Dad? And what age do you think Mom will take her Social Security? So those are just some questions I want you to think about. In your head, what age do you think you'll retire? And so if you think, okay, I think I'm going to retire at 65, but I'm not going to take my Social Security till 67, or maybe I'm going to wait till 70 so I get the biggest number. Just some key questions I want you to be thinking about, because these may change once you see what we're going to teach you tonight. Okay, so quickly just jot down, how long do you think you'll work? When do you think you might take your Social Security? And do you even know how much your Social Security is going to be? And who provides the health insurance to your child? Okay, those are key things I want you to think about. And we're going to wrap up later with what your real answer should be in that regard based upon what may happen to your child's benefits. Okay, All right. Just a couple of questions I want you to think about. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Joshua and Dave because they're going to talk about how important this piece is. Okay, so you're doing your retirement planning and how important that is, and we'll talk about that, and then we'll go into your child secondly. So Joshua and Dave.
So the most important, first of all, is to get your planning in place. If you don't have your retirement plan figured out with regards to your retirement income and insurances and other things of that nature, then planning for your person with a disability is I guess there's an old saying that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, and having that piece in place is very important. So getting your affairs figured out over the course of your retirement is key, first and foremost, and then planning beyond that, because this is retiring for 3, is the next step. And so there are processes that we will discuss here in a minute to I guess a checklist of things you need to accomplish so that you can put those things in place. And the next slide we discuss, the first one is Social Security. The majority of our country for decades have had Social Security benefits that we pay into. And the first thing is to consider is, unfortunately now you need to establish an online portal, for the most part, ssa.gov, to acquire this statement. They used to mail it to you every year. That has gone away. So if you look at the statement here on the screen, you have your child. Retirement's great. It's a very key component here at the top to discuss your financial planning. But also we need to look down here under the survivors section. If you look at this example, this is a mock statement. If you look at your child, the $21.45 a month, these are potential benefits that your child may qualify for. But then you might leave money to or have your own Social Security and spouse's Social Security. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mary Ann, because you've seen this more times than we have for sure. But there is a total family max, or a cap, for that family under the total family benefits that cannot exceed more than $5,004 a month. And that's based on the estimated earnings. There's an earnings record over the course of your employment history. And this last year, it looks like it was $96,000, and that all goes into this calculation. And these aren't numbers for everyone in the entire country that they get to receive a cap of $5,004 a month. Other people.
I pulled up another one, Joshua, if you want to. Yeah, a little different.
So in this circumstance, earnings are different. There's a different earnings history, and those matter. And so the income was $96,000, I believe, last year, and of course the earnings history might be entirely different. The cap on this one is $31,616 for the family max. So the first and foremost thing is learning how to read this in regards to your retirement and the survivor benefits, and then also just getting it. Getting this to, if you guys are not comfortable with it, we can certainly help you read this and plug it into a planning for your retirement. So
we're going to go through how this applies to your child in a later section,
yeah.
but what's important to you is understanding all those options you have for your own retirement, right? Because you can take it at different ages. You could wait till you're 70, you could take it at 62, and it impacts how much you take. And the natural instinct is, well, I'm going to wait till I get the most. But understanding sometimes that maybe we'll get something different on our spouse is really important.
Yeah.
Right. It's also very important to get this every year so we can go back and look at it, because underneath the survivor benefits, that's if you die this year. So we want to make sure we have those numbers updated.
Right. You want to keep current with what you have. And when you're putting your plan in place, you need these. So a lot of people, when I ask them, they have no idea what their benefits might be, or they might know their own, but most people have no idea that there is a survivor benefit for their child. So when you retire or become disabled or pass away, there is this benefit for your child that is over and above their basic benefits from SSI.
So the next slide is discussing cash flow. Cash flow changes over the course of your life, whether you're raising kids, or you're in the middle of retirement. Those numbers all change dramatically based on debt load and other things. So getting your cash flow figured out is key. The left column is the current cash flow. What's that look like now? You have salaries and investment income and other things. And moving on to your debts, hopefully most people try to have their mortgage paid off or close to it and in retirement. But if you're in the current situation where you're not retired, you may have a mortgage. There's other, of course, utilities and other expenses of that nature. And some of these expenses when you retire go away. And then if you move to the right column, the retirement column, some of these expenses increase. You may have additional healthcare costs, even though the mortgage might be gone or some school loans might be gone, you may have additional costs. So figuring out the cash flow is key, not only for your own retirement planning, but if you move to the other side under lifestyle, the most important thing here is the future care of the person with a disability. Figuring that out now is a unique component to this cash flow. It's also very, very important in your retirement, because this isn't something that is going to end when you retire. It's something that's going to continue on, and it's going to continue on for life without you, potentially for them. And so this needs to be a very important piece that you will work on, and we can certainly, again, help you with that, honing in on these numbers and what they all mean, because there's a lot of moving parts to this page. So that's another key important component.
And Joshua, some of the people who are surprised at that, needing to do that, putting in the number for the child, and they say, well, why do I have to worry about that now? And so they do their whole savings plan without that number in it, and they get to retirement and they had planned to live on $6,000 a month. And then it's all based on them. And then they get to retirement and they realize, oh my gosh, we totally forgot that we have a $1,200 a month expense for some program our child's in. And we kind of forgot that we need to keep doing that. Just because we're retired, that doesn't stop. So you don't want a surprise. I always tell people, when you retire, you want to have planned for it. No, you don't want to find out that you could have retired sooner, or that when you think you're going to retire, you can't retire at all.
Yeah.
It's a nice, pleasant surprise to have somebody say, oh, you could have retired 3 years ago. It's pretty rare. But if you miss this number, it's not going to be that you could retire securely if you've forgotten the other expenses that exist.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And this isn't a one-time and one snapshot in time thing we need to do. You need to do this at least once a year at minimum. Some folks update their cash flow more frequently, but the next thing is the net worth. You got to find out what the net worth of the parents or the people taking care of the person with a disability is. because this is part of the planning process. We need to provide these items to the attorney down the road, or you will down the road, to allow them to have a better snapshot and a better, give you better advice from the net worth and the cash flow. So net worth is important to look at, again, I think at least once a year, from a standpoint of markets fluctuating and debts hopefully decreasing, potentially inheritances or things of that nature. So on the left-hand column, you have assets. You have your home. It's worth something. There's always a equity value of the home, bank accounts, CDs, checking, savings. Your vehicles are worth something. It depends on, vehicles depreciate, but they're still worth something to offset the debt if you have a loan on it. And then what do your investment accounts look like? If you have non-401ks or non-Roth IRAs, or just investment accounts, you've either inherited stocks, mutual funds, or the money you're saving outside of retirement accounts. And of course, retirement accounts, that certainly matters as part of your net worth. Moving on to real estate, this is something outside of your primary home. Do you own commercial property or a rental home or rental properties or farmland? That's part of your net worth as well. And then of course, business holdings outside of that real estate column. So that left column, you add up all of your assets. That flows over to the other side to offset the liabilities. So people have a mortgage on their homes a lot of times during the working year, sometimes into retirement. Is there a second mortgage, a home equity loan that was used for a myriad of reasons you've used for whatever reason? And then what are your auto debts that offset the value of those vehicles on the right-hand column? And then student loans. It depends on where you're at in the stage of life. People still have student loans that they're paying on, and credit card debt. Sometimes credit cards happen for, again, a ton of reasons. And what's that look like to offset the other side of your assets? And then a piece we don't want to miss is insurance. There are three key, I think, pieces of insurance that we need to discuss on this page. First of all, life insurance. Life insurance is used to create an estate or protect an estate. It can be term, it can be permanent insurance, whole life. There's a ton of different types of products out there, but some of them have cash value, and that's something to consider. And then of course the death benefit, and then where is that death benefit going from a planning standpoint? The disability insurance is also a very important piece, especially while working, because if you become sick and injured and can't work, how do you fund your retirement? How do you fund the care for your person with a disability? And so the third insurance piece, insurance is never fun to talk about, but is long-term care. I've seen estates with substantial net worth decimated in a very short period of time because of either in-home care or nursing facility care for long-term care insurance. So that can erode an estate very quickly. So having those three pieces in place, death, disability, and long-term care, those three things are insured, and that's a very important piece of the financial planning process.
Especially for families who need to leave money for that third leg of their retirement for their child, right? Because if they need care themselves, then the money that they thought they were going to leave behind isn't left.
Yep.
So, yeah. Good. Okay.
So moving on to pensions, like I said, a lot of folks in the country have Social Security. Pensions sometimes have unique quirks to them in a good way. You can get your pension. You can get a number that's straight to you on a monthly basis in retirement. It's steady income as long as the pension's healthy in the company. But then you can also continue that onto a spouse. Now, there are certain pensions, you need to look into this. This is homework that you would have to do, certainly. There are certain pensions that will continue on to a person with a disability that is beyond your spouse. And so in planning retirement for three, there are, like I said, pensions that do have provisions in them to continue on. And that's something you really don't want to overlook. Pension is something that you is a benefit to you, that you've worked for an organization for many, many decades, possibly, that has that provision that they're not just going to offer it up and say, hey, here it is. You need to do the research, and we can certainly, again, help with that to find out if your pension has the provision to continue on beyond you and your spouse.
So that's a really great benefit. But the important thing about those pensions is if the pension says it'll be payable to a child or an adult child with a disability, and it says it that way, or it says it'll be paid to their guardian, what we may have undone is all the government benefits that might be paying their residential support. It might be paying all kinds of other benefits. So if a child's getting Medicaid funding or waiver money to provide for their care, and all of a sudden they get a pension check, that reduces their benefits. So it is very, very important that you find out if your pension pays for three, what does it say? And if you're not sure, Joshua and Dave can help you find that out. But I will tell you, there's teachers' pensions, state police pensions, firemen, fighter pensions, all these pensions pay, but the federal government pension first pays to a third person. If they're paying to the third person, it needs language that says it will allow it to be paid to a special needs trust. Mm-hmm. And then the trust has to be able to accept that. So it's very, very important. If you say you get a pension, that's homework. You're going to find us saying that's homework a lot. So get your pension document. How do you find that out? You get your pension document. If you go to your HR department and say, does my pension pay beyond my husband? The answer will probably be no, but do not accept that answer. Always say, I need a copy of the pension document, and you need to read it, and you sit down with your financial person, you sit down with your attorney and say, what has to happen? I mean, we had a state police officer come in and the state police pension paid to third way. That required legislation to change. We got it changed. We worked with the legislator to get that changed, but it took work. Sometimes it means going in front of the pension board of a company or a group and explaining what the issue is and getting the pension board to approve a change. So just because it says it'll pay directly to the child, don't accept that. We always say, fight, you're an advocate forever. So it's an important thing to remember when you're looking at everything. Okay, so we talked about you. And we said of all the pieces you need to gather. We didn't tell you what to do with it yet, but we told you need to gather a lot, right? So I think, Dave, you're going to cover next the child, right? Okay.
So part of creating the overall financial plan, especially with a family with a person with special needs, we need to look at not only creating a vision for your retirement, but also creating a vision for their retirement. So there's going to be two, I don't know how I want to say this, but two different stages, I guess, in the child's life with you and then a life without you. So we need to create a vision for that. So just like we created a cash flow for yourself, we also need to look at a cash flow for your child. So where's that money going to come from? Where's the income going to come from? So is it going to come from benefits? Something's going to come from savings. It could come from insurance money. It could come from other family members. It could come from work. And then there's also going to be the outflows. So where's that child going to be living? Where are their medical expenses going to be? Where are their recreation expenses going to be? Are there going to be education expenses or other expenses? So these are all things that we need to take together or put together in order to create the future map. So in creating the future map, we can look at, what the income is going to be and what the expenses are going to be, where that child is actually in their stage. Are they in their adulthood? Are they already in life without you? Or are they still in a transition stage? So these are very important things to look at when putting all this together. So the nice thing is Protected Tomorrows has tools and stuff for you to use with this. They've created an annual expense worksheet for you that you can kind of go down through, and you can look at your living expenditures, while they're still living with you or with family, and then when they're out on their own. So we have two different columns here we can look at. We can look at whether they're living expenditures now for like housing and different things. We can look at their medical expenditures. We can look at their recreational expenditures, and we can put this all together to come up with when they're currently living with a guardian or family. And then we can also try to estimate how much that's going to be when they're living on their own. So as Marianne indicated earlier, Protected Tomorrows has put together a planning system for you to sign on to. You can look at, you can try to do it on your own if you want to. If you want help, we are always here to help you.
Okay. So out of that second process, we're going to know, the number. So remember, Joshua talked about that care line item that you need to put into your retirement. So the tools that Dave talked about is we're going to feed that back into your plan. So we're going to say, what is that number while your child's either living with you or on their own? Then we need to pool into that. And then you put those numbers into the system, and it'll come back and help you figure out what's the pot of money that I'm going to have to not only spend while I'm retired, but what's the pot of money I'm going to have to leave when I'm gone. All right. So the next question always is, well, isn't the government going to pay that? How much is the government going to step up with? And so sometimes it's a known, sometimes it's, we look into the future. We don't know what the government is going to pay into the future, but we know what the rules are today. We certainly don't want to do anything. I don't think I would want to do this for my son, to say, oh no, government, you're going to help my son out. No, I'm going to do something so that he doesn't get it. It's not a choice we make. So I'm going to take a few minutes and help make sure you understand the programs. And then I'm going to tie it back into you and what kind of choices do you have to make sure your child's okay. All right. So I'm going to go through the benefits circle and talk about when did your child get benefits? When do they change? All right. And when do they change is really dependent on a lot of things, decisions you make for your own retirement, which is why I asked in the beginning, when do you think you're going to retire? And when do you think you're going to take your Social Security? So let's look at the basics first. This circle talks about two different kinds of programs. The first one being an entitlement. An entitlement is a program that we pay into. We are entitled to things because we funded it. So if you work and you get a paycheck, you can look on the paycheck, most of us pay into something that's all called FICA, and that is our Social Security and our Medicare payments. So we're entitled to something. There are some of us who don't work or work somewhere we didn't get those benefits, and we might get benefits because we need them, not because we're entitled to them. If I go to the left side of this circle, we're going to be talking about things that are actual money, and the things on the right are going to be things that pay for programs, job coaching, healthcare, and residential support. So we know of those two, healthcare and residential support, are probably the big numbers and that are really critical. So let's start with entitlements. So and it's all going to be talking about everything right now related to a disability. So the disability I could get if I'm disabled is called SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. And I would get that if, because I paid into a system, I become disabled and they will give me my benefit. Okay, they'll give me the amount I paid in, which is what shows up on your Social Security statement. If you get a Social Security statement, it will show you how much disability you can get if you can prove you're disabled. So Social Security has their rules and what they determine if you're disabled. They say if you cannot make substantial gainful activity, meaning a certain amount per month, because of your disability, not because there's a pandemic, not because the market's bad, but because of your disability, you cannot make this money and you can prove it with medical records or testing that you do, then you will be able to get this entitlement. So if I became disabled, I would have to prove that I could make less than, and it's around $1,260 or $80 a month. It's changing. I'm going to give you I don't want to give you an exact number because we're so close to the end of the year, it will change, but assume a number around $1,200. If that I can not make that amount, I would be considered disabled. If I can make a little more than that, sometimes I have expenses related to my disability that I can prove them. But whatever that SGA is at the time of my disability is the number that I have to pay attention to my income. So if I became disabled and I could not do my job as heading up Protected Tomorrows and speaking and teaching, if I couldn't do that, then what would happen is I would show to the government, I can't do my job. And they would say to me, yeah, but I think you could be the receptionist at your company and you could still make money. So they wouldn't give me my disability if I could still do a job making a certain amount of money. Now I might have private insurance that would solve that problem, but that's how the government program works. If I cannot do a job, not my job, and make money, all right? So I would get my benefit, and I could even have a 401k with $1 million in it. But if I can prove that I'm eligible for this disability because of my disability, I would get the check. And then 2 years later, I would be eligible for Medicare. So those two go together. This left hand, the top circle, the top of the circle is benefits for those who are entitled. I would get my disability and I get my Medicare, okay? And Medicare is gonna pay my hospital bills and my doctor bills, and that's what it's gonna pay. It doesn't pay drugs, it pays my hospitals and doctor bills, and there are some co-pays and things like that. It's still a pretty good program, okay? Right. So what happens if I'm not entitled? What happens if I'm needy and I need benefits, I am not entitled to it because I didn't work? So that's where these other programs come in. SSI is a program that gives me a check. Again, it's on the cash side. It happens to be in 2020, $783 a month. It'll probably go up a little bit next year. I think they've maybe just announced it, but you always have to know what that number is, all right? So what do I have to prove to get that? So my son, who has a disability, could get this, and someone who's under 18 might be able to get it. But if they're under 18, the rules apply to mom and dad. So we're not going to talk about that program today. We're going to talk about what happens, because we're planning for long-term, to our child who's 18 or older. How can they get this SSI? Because they're looking then at not mom and dad's income and assets, but the child's income and assets. So again, we have to be able to prove that person cannot make substantial gainful activity and therefore have a job and make that much money. If we can again prove that with IEPs and medical records and all the other proof we can have, we can prove that person can't make that amount, and we can prove they don't have too many assets. So what can a person have if they have a disability and they're over 18, and they have to be at least, it has to be after the first of the month or their 18th birthday, because that was a full month when they're 18. And I can already prove that they can't work and make the money. What assets can they have? They can own a home, a car, a prepaid funeral, $2,000, and an ABLE account, which we will talk about, okay? So there's certain assets they can have, but if they have more than that, they won't become eligible. They won't be eligible for this program. So we're going to be talking later about, wow, I want to leave my child money, because we talked about how important that is. How are we going to do that? We will talk about vehicles and tools we can use. So there's the benefit that my child can get, $783 a month for this purpose. We'll use that number. And then it depends what state you're in. You may have to do a separate application for Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is the program that pays, again, healthcare. So my child's 18. I want to get him on SSI. I want to get him on Medicaid. Now, this is a really important component here. The child's getting Medicaid. They're 18. Mom and dad are probably still working. Mom and dad have your child on their health insurance program. Should they also then apply for Medicaid? The child's already got health care. Medicaid is what I call a golden ticket. Without Medicaid, you don't get lots of other things. It's not just about health care. So I always encourage people who are getting these benefits for their child, apply for Medicaid or in Medi-Cal if you're in California. I think we're focused not in California today, but you never know where you're going to move. So Medicaid will pay that health care, but what about those other things that Medicaid pays? When a child comes out of school into other programs, many of them are called Medicaid waiver programs, and so they need Medicaid for that. So what happens with health insurance? Health insurance under what we call today Obamacare covers a child until they're 26. However, depending upon the state you live in, or rather the state you work in, because the company controls this, the company's state will determine if that state requires the company to provide health insurance past the age of 26. Now, the company in some states must do it if the company is not self-funding the health insurance plan. So if you go to your HR department and say, well, you're taking my child off my group health insurance because they're 26, I thought there was a law. The HR department say, well, I don't think so. You're going to have to go on COBRA. Again, as a parent, it's incumbent upon you to find out, A, where is your company domiciled? What state? Is the company self-funding the health insurance or not? And do they cover individuals with disabilities past the age of 26? Find those answers out. I will tell you, in a lot of states, they cover the child. The child can stay on the health insurance plan as long as the parents have it. Now, this is really important to you as we talk about some things going forward. Okay, I want you to remember that. So at this point, your child's getting their SSI and they're getting Medicaid, and Medicaid is secondary to their group health insurance. So they have group health insurance, and Medicaid would be the second card you pass on to the doctor and to the pharmacist and to the hospital. Most hospitals take Medicaid, not all doctors do, which is a really important thing to understand. So not all doctors have to take it, and it covers drugs. Now, Medicaid pays for drugs, but the law has recently changed in some states that says if the doctor is prescribing drugs, that doctor must be a Medicaid doctor. If you wanted to pay the drugs, the doctor must be a Medicaid doctor. So there's all these little nuances that it is really important to understand how Medicaid works, right? But Medicaid, even if it doesn't pay some of those things for healthcare, you do want it because you'll need that program when your child gets pulled for other funding after they get through school. You'll need that Medicaid. All right. All right. So what happens over time with this? Okay. So if your child hasn't worked yet, they're not eligible for the top benefits, but they would be eligible for the bottom benefits as long as you make sure that we have proof of their disability and you don't have assets that are too many. That's our job, to make sure that we don't goof that up and let their child be saving money in their name, okay? So what counts of some of those things that can goof us up? Checking accounts and savings accounts in your child's name with their social security number, savings bonds in their name, life insurance cash value if they own the policy. Some policies, when your child turns 18, they become a legal adult and that policy is theirs and the cash value is all of a sudden theirs. Check those savings bonds that are in the drawer. Your child turns 18 and you forgot about them, Social Security will find out about them and you'll get a letter eventually saying, oh, you had this. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all of those things are going to count, right? All right, so let's now do a scenario because we are talking about retiring for 3. And I'm taking a very simple one because it can get very complex, but I'm going to show you a simple one that makes it important to you. So here is somebody, it's dad's Social Security statement. And he says, it says when he is 67, I'm going to show you all the options, but this one says when he is 67, he is going to get $2,600 a month. It also says a child, and child means a minor child or a disabled adult child can get up to $1,800 a month. And the most this record of dad can pay is $4,400 a month. Okay, those are our statistics we're going to use for this one. $2,600 a month for dad, $1,800 a month maximum for a child. If dad is disabled, dies, or retires. Those are 3 important components of when the child can collect that money. And the most they can pay on dad's record is $4,400. So let's say dad goes to Social Security and says, show me the money, I'm 67. They will give him $2,600 a month. He's married. His wife never worked, okay? She was a stay-at-home mom. She has no Social Security record, which is part of the problem that's wrong with our Social Security system, because if you have a career but you haven't earned enough, you may not have your own Social Security record, okay? There's some of the stuff that's on the table for some changes in the future. So if I'm the spouse and I don't have a Social Security record, we look at my record and it says 0 on this line. How much can I get? I get to get half my own or half of my spouse's age 67 benefit, whichever is more. So I could get 0 or 1,300. I think I'll take the 1,300. Okay, so how much are they now paying out of my husband's record? The 2,600 plus my 1,300, which is 3,900. Now let me just give you one little fact to know. If my Social Security record said I would get $200 a month, that's all I would get, I would still get 1,300, but 200 would be mine and 1,100 would be off my spouse's record. So it's important to understand you will always get your own, but if you're going to get half of your spouse's, they will bring you up to half of your spouse's, but they will still pay you yours first. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to assume, keeping it simple, that they're paying 3,900 out of my spouse's record. On the family benefit, how much is left? 4,400 minus the 3,900 is $500. So what's going to happen? So let's go through the scenario in this case. Mom and dad applied for benefits for the child when they turned 18. Okay, parents are working. They're paying the child $783 a month. Now let's watch what's going to happen. Dad went to Social Security and said, show me my money. He got his 2,600. Mom was old enough to get her benefit, and so she got half of his. And so now they're paying the 3,900, and we said there was 500 left. Let's look at the circle. They're going to give the child the most they can give the child on mom and dad's record, which was $500, okay? So the $500 is called from another program called DAC, Disabled Adult Child. They're going to move the child from SSI into that Social Security program called DAC. Now, when this occurs, I will tell you, dad applies and mom applies. On when dad applies, they say, do you have a child with a disability? And you check the yes. When you check the yes, the child must reapply and prove they're disabled again. Okay, it didn't used to be, this is very new. Social Security requires when the child wants to get this benefit on the parent's record, we do have to prove that the child still has a disability, all right? So keeping good medical records continues to be important. Keeping the child's assets under the, keeping good records of the child's money is still important. So when we prove the child's still disabled, they will give $500 from the DAC program, and they will lower the SSI to 283. Why did they do that? Because SSI is there to give you 783. If you get money from the other bucket, it lowers your SSI. So this child is still getting 783. They're just getting 2 checks. Okay. Now, what's important here is when we apply for that DAC benefit, we only get that DAC benefit when one of the parents applies for Social Security. Now, this is what's important. When you get the next benefit here is 2 years from when you get into that social. When you move up into the top of the circle is when you become eligible for Social Security. When you move up that, you're out of the SSI system into the Social Security world. When 2 years after you've been on that upper circle, you become eligible for Medicare. This is really important, okay? So at this point, 2 years after the parent retired, mom and dad retired, the child now has the DAC benefit under SSA, they have their SSI, they have Medicare, and they have Medicaid. So Medicare is the same program seniors are on. It's a good health insurance plan, and Medicaid can be their supplement. So Medicare is paying for the basic stuff, Medicaid is paying for the supplement, and Medicaid is paying for the drugs. Okay, again, there's all these limitations about Medicaid, and you may not be able to get the supplement paid because a doctor doesn't take it, but it's good coverage for hospitals and for drugs, all right? So I want you to remember when Medicare kicks in, 2 years after the time the child gets their DAC benefit, right? Now, I'll show you one more stage that occurs because you need this for when you're doing your planning for your child. Okay, so your child's still getting their 283. I'm 783 total. When dad passes away, it changes. So you think you got this under control, and then dad passes away, and then later mom passes away. In this particular situation, if dad passes away, mom would get dad's benefit. Okay, so spouse gets the higher. So spouse goes into from the 20 goes to 2,600, and then mom passes away. So it changes for mom and dad. But when there's enough in that bucket for the child to get the maximum, guess what happens? The child will go from getting their 783 to getting 1,800, which was the full benefit. Why is this important? When you're doing all this planning that Joshua and David talked about, and you're saying how much is coming in for this child, they were getting 783 for a long time. All of a sudden, they're getting 1,800 a month. Will that help? Absolutely. Do we want to lose any of these benefits because they're getting a pension? Absolutely not. Now, the most important thing we talked about here is not only dollars, but I will tell you something people worry about is health insurance. So let's say your child is on your health insurance. Okay, this is the hard part and it gets very technical, but I need you to be thinking about it because it goes back to that first question I asked is when are you going to retire and when are you going to take your Social Security? So if mom and dad here were working and their child was on their health insurance, and then they chose to retire, the day dad retires, and he leaves his job, and mom wasn't working, we said, dad's working. So the child was on dad's health insurance, right? Dad retires. He gets his Social Security, yay. Mom gets Social Security, yay. And child goes into this other program, right? Child's now getting SSA and SSI. How long does a child have to wait to go into the Medicare system? 2 years. If that's the case, for 2 years, the child has no health insurance because dad already retired. Child has no health insurance, except they have Medicaid, right? So Medicaid is going to be their coverage for 2 years. If their doctors don't take Medicaid, if the doctor doesn't have Medicaid coverage and the drugs he's prescribing don't get covered by Medicaid, the child has only Medicaid. And so the hospital will be covered, but the doctors won't be covered. That's a risk most families don't want. So how do we fix that? We have to think about who's going to take their Social Security when. So many times I will look and say, okay, dad, remember I said maybe dad had a benefit, maybe mom had a little benefit of $200. I might have had mom say, mom's going to take her Social Security over $200. Now, mom can't get benefits on dad unless dad's retiring too. Okay, mom, if she had no work record or mom has a work record, she had $200. She says, well, I'm going to wait and I'm going to take it when dad retires because I'm going to get half of his. No, I wouldn't do that. I would look at that and say, okay, dad, retire at 67 if you want. Mom's going to say, but at 65, I'm going to go get mine. Mom's going to take her. She wouldn't even get $200 if that was her benefit. Let's say mom gets $150. Should she get it? Yes. Why? Mom goes and applies for her Social Security, gets $150. Woohoo, maybe she can go out to dinner once in a while, right? Not a lot of money. However, what happens when mom starts her Social Security? Who else will get a DAC benefit? The minute one of the parents applies, the child will get something. Now, the child might get $10 from DAC, $20. We don't care. It's a small amount. We're going to look at mom's Social Security, which is why we told you need both mom and dad's Social Security record. Mom takes hers at 65. Dad's going to take his at 67. Mom's going to get a little check. Child's going to move into this Social Security DAC world called the little dollar. And so maybe they're getting $753 of SSI and $20 of DAC. But guess what that did 2 years later? When dad retires at 67 and the child loses their health insurance, child gets Medicare when dad retires. So it's very, very important. Remember when I asked, when are you each going to retire? If one of you has a lesser income and the child's going to lose their health insurance, it is really important to think this through. It is not a simple answer. It's something that Joshua and David could help you think through. It is not simple. It's who should take theirs first, who should take theirs second. It's all about who provides the health insurance, when will the child lose it, and how can we make sure that somebody applies for Social Security sooner, if possible, when it's possible, so that the child can get into the Medicare system, and then when the parent loses their health insurance, they're already in, okay? A little complicated, but I thought if we walk through an example, it would help you understand how important that is. You have a choice of having your child on Medicaid with not much coverage, or a choice of taking a little less Social Security on one of you. Still, maybe dad waits till he's 70, to take a Social Security. Maybe he retires at 67, but maybe he doesn't take a Social Security. Those are all things that are financial decisions that you need to decide based upon your financial plan. So should you wait till you're 70? I will tell you something else too. If you use the Social Security analyzers that are out there, you go online and you check on Social Security analyzers and you put in your information, it will tell you when you should take your Social Security. Dad, wait till you're 70, mom takes it at 65. It'll tell you all these great answers of how to get the most money. You can't use those. If your child's on your group health insurance, that won't apply. So once again, we as parents who have a disabled child need to think differently than everybody else. We need to know this stuff or work with somebody who knows this stuff, okay? A lot of complicated stuff, but you need to look at this circle and start filling in your numbers to say, what's mom gonna get, when's dad gonna get, and go back to that original sheet and fill in those dates, okay? The other thing I want you to be aware of is that there are premiums for Medicare. And so again, work with your advisor to talk about when you are going to retire. Your Medicare premiums can be reasonable, but they're tied to what your tax return says 2 years before you go into Medicare. So if you're making a lot of money, or you decide you have a bunch of stock you want to sell, the timing of doing all of that impacts your Medicare premiums. So the choices you make impact everybody. It's really important to not do it in a vacuum and just think. People come to us sometimes and they've done some things and later on it's just impacted them for many, many years. This is stuff you have to think about at least 10 years before you're retiring, thinking it through. Okay. I hope I didn't drive everybody crazy with that because it's complicated, right? But I want you to know that it is complicated and that getting help is a really important component of your planning. All right, so what are the tools that you're going to need to keep going forward? One, we talked about it. Joshua talked about the importance of you understanding your assets and your liabilities, right? Dave talked about the importance of figuring out the future needs of your child, right? As well as, so you got that. So you know what your child's going to need. It's the map, it's the vision. We talked about creating a vision for your child, the vision of where they're going to live, where they're going to learn, where they're going to work, where they're going to play, where they're going to pray. All those things that you need to have for your child. Building the dream team around their lives and having the people in place to do that. Coming up with the numbers and then figuring out how are you going to fund something and not screw up everything we just talked about. So I'm going to pass this on. You've got this tool, right? You got the net worth. You're going to go to somebody and get some help. So I'm going to pass this on to Jennifer because she's the attorney who's going to help you figure out now what. How can we make sure that we're leaving enough for our child and not goofing up all those other things? Jennifer?
Thanks, Mary Ann. And thank you for having me tonight. I think we're getting a little feedback for me here. Okay, there we go. I think this is part of that homework that Mary Ann referenced a little bit earlier, that this is part of your homework. There's so much information out there and it can be overwhelming. So choosing a team to work with to make sure that you can understand your options and what the best option is based on your current financial picture, your future financial picture, and that picture that you have for your special needs child that you're trying to provide for. So this is a slide that just kind of gives you a very high-level overview of different types of special needs trusts. And I think a lot of people hear about, first-party special needs trusts or third-party trusts. So if you're looking on the left of the slide, that's going to be more of your third-party trust. So what does that mean? That means it is established by someone else, a third party, for the benefit of your person who has a disability. The wonderful thing about these special needs trusts that they can be established and funded at any point in time during your child's life, and can be utilized by many members of your family to ensure that you're not violating those income standards and rules that are out there that would mess up those benefits. And that's one of our major goals, is we want to make sure that the child's benefits stay in place because they're utilizing them. They're incredibly important for their health care, for their support, their maintenance. These special needs trusts are really meant to supplement those benefits that are already in place, that are provided by the government, that are either needs-based or because you've paid into the system and earned those benefits for your child. So the discretionary special needs trust, like a first party or a pooled trust or an ABLE account that Mary Ann's going to talk about in a little bit here, will be able to supplement that care. So what can that pay for? That can pay for things that are not covered by the government benefits. So technology, additional housing costs, luxury items, those types of things that may benefit your child in a profound way to allow them to communicate and grow and thrive, that the basic benefits can't cover. And if they lost those basic benefits, the items that they inherited could really hinder the ability for them to have just their basic needs met. So with that third party trust, the wonderful thing about that is once your disabled child no longer has a need for it, they've passed on, you can designate who the beneficiary is for that trust. So leaving it to other family members of yours, your heirs, or if there was a charity that you felt was profound in your child's life or in your life, you can even leave the balance of the special needs trust to that charity and make a difference for other individuals who might have a need that don't have the resources that you may have available. This discretionary special needs trust can receive some of those assets. You work with qualified financial planners like Joshua and David to determine what assets are put into this trust bucket for the benefit of your child. The supplemental payback trust serves a similar purpose in that it still provides those supplemental benefits, but at the disabled child's passing, the state does have to be reimbursed first for the amounts that they paid out for the benefit of your child during that child's entire lifetime that they were receiving those benefits, before the balance can go to any of the heirs. So a trust that's possibly set up by your child, if they qualify per state regulations, or a pooled trust or something of that nature, you don't control as much as to where these funds actually end up. So if the child receives money from some other source and somehow it gets into one of these supplemental payback trusts, it does have some restrictions about how it can get to your heirs. So working with a qualified estate planning attorney to learn about these tools and what's most appropriate for your particular situation is important. There's so much information about there on the internet, so I don't recommend people have Google as their lawyer, because I don't think they would use Google as their doctor or their financial planner. So Mary Ann's going to explain some more of the tools that are available. That is a new tool called the ABLE Act next.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. So if you missed the class last month, Jennifer talked quite a bit longer about some of these trusts. So I think it's recorded and you can go back and look at that. So I encourage you to do that. And if you don't have a trust, make sure to connect with Jennifer, because it's a key piece of this entire plan. I'm going to talk briefly about the ABLE. So the ABLE account is another tool. It's just a tool. I always say all these things are just tools in our toolbox. And the ABLE account is some legislation that was passed that allows us to save in a tax-free account for a child with special needs. And it's a way to save money that will not count against them. There's lots of rules to make it work right. The ABLE account is not just something you go set up with an investment person. They're by state. A lot of states have them, not every state. Some states let everybody in, some states let only their state in. I could speak to the Illinois account, allows anybody to get into the Illinois ABLE. There are different components to the ABLE account. So you can have an account that has a checking account and a savings account. You can get a debit card for your child. This money is owned by your child. Unless they have a guardian or an appointed authorized person, the ABLE account is actually the owner of the account is your child. So it complements the special needs trust. Remember, the special needs trust is controlled by someone else. Your child cannot control that. That's called the trustee. The ABLE account can be controlled by your child unless they have a guardian or a appointed person to do that for them. Now, so this is an account where we can put money in. The amount that can be put in any 1 year, child can only have one ABLE account. Okay, they can't have, grandma can't set one up and you can't set one up. Your child can have one ABLE account. The amount that could go in the ABLE account in any 1 year is the amount of the gifting, federal gifting amount. And currently it's 15,000. I just saw the Illinois rules that they're not going to increase that for next year. So the most that can go into any one ABLE account for your child is $15,000. Okay. That can come from anyone. It can come from grandma, it can come from you. It's a great way to have people gift into your child. There's also an additional amount that can be put in if your child earns money. They're allowed to put a little over than $12,000 also from their earnings into an account. The money can come from anywhere. It can come from any people. It can come from your child. It can come from other people. When do we use this? Grandma wants to give your child, is giving all the grandchildren a gift. They can give them a gift, okay? The child has too much is building up in their checking account. So remember, they can only have $2,000 and they are depositing their disability check in and they're working. So they can take some of that money that's building up and getting close to $2,000 and move it to their ABLE account. They're also allowed to have their Social Security check deposited directly into the ABLE account. That's new. So sometimes people just keep getting in trouble and having that money build up in the checking account. And then they get the letter to say for the last 4 months, you had $2,002 in your checking account, you're going to lose. So you're going to lose those benefits. So sometimes they just have those checks deposited directly into the ABLE account, and that works. You still have that 15,000 limitation, so we have to pay attention. There are lots of rules around this. The child has to have a disability that's been diagnosed before the age of 26. That's one of the rules, one account. And it is used to provide disability services, disability related expenses. It's very broad. When we did a seminar the last 3 weeks this month, the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st. They've all been recorded. If you don't know a lot about the ABLE account, you can go to our website and pull those up. And it talks about the specific rules. A, how can you use this money? B, how does it fit in? So if how does it relate to your government benefits? Okay. So you want to understand this legislation and you want to understand this tool. And one of the other differences between the Special Needs Trust and the ABLE account is the Special Needs Trust can own a home. It can pay for lots of services, but it cannot pay rent. An ABLE account can pay rent. So I'm going to give you an example. My son gets disability benefits. He lives in subsidized housing. His rent is more than he can pay with his disability check. I wasn't allowed to help him pay his rent because that would be subsidizing him. But I am able to put money into an ABLE account for him, and he can use that account to help him pay his rent. So there are some great uses of the ABLE account. I'm not going to, we're not here to go through the details of it, but I wanted to know it is another vehicle that can be used. It is not, somebody says, well, why do I need a special needs trust if I can use the ABLE account? The two things you should know about the ABLE account are, one, your child can have up to in Illinois, and it's based upon the state that the account is for. So if the Illinois ABLE can have up to $450,000 in an ABLE account. However, if your child has SSI, if they have more than $100,000 in their account, their SSI will be suspended. Now, the account's only been around for a couple of years, so the chance of somebody having 100,000 in it is pretty slim. The market's not growing that fast, right? The other downside of the ABLE account is that when the child passes away, the state can get reimbursed for Medicaid spent from the time the account was opened. Now, what they considered payback is the federal waiver, the federal money. The state of Illinois and some states are not going after the state money, they're only going after federal money. So, but it's still be aware that the ABLE account has a reimbursement back to the state. It's just, there's a lot of conversations by state of what money they're going to go after. I would say just do this with your eyes open, that whatever's in that ABLE account when your child passes away, the state has the ability to claw back that dollar. So I would be careful when you're funding this. I tend to think of the ABLE account as something your child's using as a tool to have access to funds for themselves. And the special needs trust is a big pot of money that is the money that somebody is going to use to pay services for them. And let's say you fund the ABLE account with 15,000, so your child has access to funds that they need on a regular daily basis. If the special needs trust is allowed to fund that account in the future, your child will always have money accessible to them without having to put too much money in the ABLE account and have a huge payback. You could have the special needs trust funded appropriately. And it could be the trustees be given the authority to fund the ABLE account on an annual basis based upon the plan. So the plan is really important, right? The plan drives how much does your child need to have access to, and the plan also drives how much has to be in that special needs trust for your child's future. So how much to put in each one, again, is part of that plan that you'd sit down with Joshua and Dave to say, what's that life plan look like? And how much has to go into each of these accounts each year or over time and when you pass away, right? So it's got a lot of rules around it, and based upon the state you're in also has rules around it. So determine which state program you're going to use. Some states, there's also a tax credit if you use that state and you live in that state. So if you're not sure which ABLE account to use, there's some on a couple of websites that compare all the different ABLE accounts. It's very useful. Okay, and we could probably include that in some of the materials that we provide after this session so that the R can provide that to you. Okay, so we've got all these pieces, right? We talked about it is complex. You need your legal work done, you need your financial work done, you need to understand benefits. Oh my gosh. We don't want to confuse you. We want to give you enough information to pool. That's the purpose of tonight. Pull all your information together and sit down with someone and work through it. Okay, so this original sheet that I gave you, I just wanted you to rethink those questions I asked you up front. Okay, we said, are mom and dad still working? Probably. Okay, what age do you think you're going to retire? Now, maybe mom isn't working, or maybe dad isn't working, right? Maybe you're the stay-at-home mom. Who's working? Then the next question I asked you to write down is who has the health insurance, right? So if your child, and can your child stay on that health insurance based on the rules of today? So if that's true, and you're going to retire, when are you going to take your Social Security? That could mean retiring and taking it later. It could be mom or whoever's the lower earner, maybe dad, whoever it is might take their Social Security sooner. To get your child covered for health coverage with Medicare at some point. So maybe your answers are different from when I first asked. So I gave you this tool that you can use to start looking and pulling your Social Security records and filling in these buckets of how much Social Security will anybody get and who has the health insurance and when is it going to stop. So this helps you do that, and you could use this to identify some of those answers you need to answer. Okay, Joshua and Dave.
Yes, there's additional questions. There's additional questions that are kind of a call to action of things that you need to do. This goes back to some of the worksheets at the beginning of the conversation about net worth and cash flow and things of that nature. But how much does your person with a disability need? Life without you, or when you're retired, or right now? Do you have that number? on paper. It changes, I'm sure. It's a very fluid number. It changes frequently. Have you budgeted for your person with a disability in retirement? It's not just you. Again, this is retiring for three. It's not just your retirement, but it's over the course of your retirement and life after you. What's that number look like from a cash flow standpoint? And number three is how much is left in your estate for him or her. I'm going to skip down to the second from last. The number three is how much is left in your estate. If there's not enough assets for you to retire and for their care ongoing, is there a life insurance policy that needs to be put in place that will help maintain their lifestyle beyond your life expectancy? And then what are the proper amounts to put in an ABLE account? Like Marianne said, there's certain intricacies to that account. There's certain caps on how much you can have in that account over time. And there's certain caps on how much you can put into that account, and others can put into that account on their behalf. And then how much do you leave in the special needs trust? That has specific goals, that trust. What are the appropriate amounts to put in that trust? Again, I skipped ahead, but do you need a second to die life insurance policy where it doesn't pay out until the second person, the second spouse in this circumstance, passes away, and then that funds the care of the special needs person? And then who else is going to provide via inheritances, sometimes unexpected inheritance or unwanted inheritance, which Jennifer talked about an OBRA trust in the last presentation. Who on purpose or on accident are funding the care of the person with a disability? So these are additional questions on this planning tonight.
And I think another point there is the importance of when you get this done, so you identify all these pieces, I would suggest a family meeting. Okay, so you get the trust done, you do all the pieces, no one knows this but you. Okay, you eat, sleep, and drink this, but grandma and grandpa and brothers and sisters and all those other relatives don't know it. I always suggest sit down with Jennifer and Joshua and Dave and bring the family in and sit down and have a family meeting so that everybody is educated and so nobody goofs things up. And I can't even tell you the number of people say, oh, don't worry about it, nobody's going to leave anything. Oops. You would want to know, first of all, if they were, because that would certainly make it easier on your planning that somebody's going to do something. And you really don't want to have that first party trust because a mistake was made if that person could leave it directly to the third party, right? So, and you know what? And the other thing is, people sometimes have really good intentions and it just has a bad result if they don't. So having the family meeting, A, is important, and B, because it makes everybody, people want to help sometimes. And this gives them the opportunity to do so. It gives, they also worry, if they're siblings, they're like, I wonder what mom and dad are doing. Okay, so it allows the siblings to also be involved in that process. Okay, so next, call to actions here.
So this is a very important step that sometimes is kind of overlooked. Once we get everything kind of put in place, what needs to be updated? Are there beneficiaries that need to be updated? Do we need to look at bank accounts that may be in the child's name that need to be moved? What needs to be invested and where to invest it? Is it invested in a third-party trust? Is it invested in an ABLE account? What type of insurance do you need? You need an insurance to create an estate that's going to provide for your child later on in the future. Do you need to retitle anything? Like I said earlier, like a bank account that may be in the child's name that can be retitled over to a third-party trust. And who do you need to talk to? Do you need to talk to an attorney? Do you need to talk to Protected Tomorrow so they can help you with your, finding the right benefits for your child? Do you need to talk to a financial planner to make sure that you're putting together a plan for the future?
You might also need to talk to future guardians, because you're the guardian and you're putting in your will, you're nominating someone in your you're not really appointing them. you're just saying, these are the people I want to do the job. You want to maybe have those conversations with those people, or maybe trustees. Or do you have people who can step into that role, or do you need to talk to corporate trustees and corporate guardians? So finding out all the players, we always call them the dream team, who's going to be, I just got through working with one family, and we sat down and identified who the guardians and trustees are going to be. But then the other thing they did was they built this book of, these are all the people. This is the person who, my child's still young, if something happens to me, here's the person who knows about IEPs, here's the person who knows all the medical needs of my child, here's the person, they built this whole book of all the players, and they don't have a legal job in the legal documents, but they're a resource group that could be called upon, because it will tell you what, when you put into this plan, the people who are going to be the care people and the money people, they have a big job, right? And so the more you can help them and identify the help for them, and you don't think about this, but people get sick at the last minute. Something happens to people. We just had somebody in our office who was working with us one day, and the wife called us the next day, and he had an aneurysm and passed away. Okay. We don't know what's going to happen to any of us. So the importance of talking to people and finding out and documenting things is so important, because all of us have had experiences where something happens to someone and nothing was done right, or it was done right, or it's halfway done. So conversations are really key for us. Okay. So, wow, I think we went through a lot, everybody. Anybody, Joshua, David, Jennifer, anything else to add before Mary tells us if there's any questions? You want people to know?
I just like to say Dave and I are certainly here, and Jennifer locally in the Quad Cities to help along this entire process with regards to any questions anyone has, gathering these pieces, plugging them into worksheets, and it can be daunting, and we're certainly here to help. And Jennifer, I would agree, certainly, as we can get the financials together, we can get those to her, and she can help plan from a legal standpoint as well.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I'd say is just take one step at a time.
Yeah.
All you have to do is just take that first step.
Yeah. It can be daunting, all the things you have to do. But I can tell you stories where people took the first step and they come back 15 years later and they have all this confidence that they have done everything they can, and they are feeling like their child is on the road to success. I've had many people say, they've gone through this process, and it's just, they feel like they've done the best they can do, which is what we all want for our children, right? Mm-hmm. So I encourage you, Joshua and David have been trained by us to learn this, and we're going to be there to support them if they need it. So, and we always try to find the attorneys like Jennifer who know what they're doing. So we're trying to go into cities and help find people who can help you. And so I encourage you to take those steps. Mary, have any questions for us?
We do have some. First one, I was told by a Medicaid representative that if my son went on Medicare, he would have to buy a Part D plan to pay for his drugs because Medicaid would not. Is that correct?
Okay, so when they go into the Medicare system, they can keep Medicaid, and Medicaid will pay, Medicaid is there to pay the drugs. So they don't need a drug plan. In some cases, if they're on specific drugs and they find out they wouldn't be covered, some families do look at all the different options. They even look at Medicare supplements based upon their medical needs. So you look at everything that's possible and you decide what the best solution is. But you don't lose when you go into Medicare, you don't necessarily lose Medicaid.
Okay. Where does the PWD get help with financial planning if both parents have died and have left no will naming a guardian?
Repeat that question.
Where does your loved one get help with financial planning if both parents have died and left no will naming a guardian?
So so I guess the question is, if the parents were guardian, if the parents weren't guardian, that assumed that either the child had capability or the parents just hadn't done that. So someone would have to petition, maybe Jennifer, you can pop in on here, would somebody have to petition the court to become their guardian if a guardian was needed?
That's usually the first step in the situation. Is you'd have a party who would either petition on behalf of the proposed ward, which is the person with a disability. They're called the ward in a guardianship case. Sometimes that's brought by an agency that sees a need, say that the child doesn't have siblings or a family member, and they know that that child needs to have someone to handle medical decisions or things for them. In our area, we do have the Office of the State Guardian, and we also have a county public guardian. Depending on income levels, if there is no family member or someone who can serve as the guardian for that person with disabilities, those offices / state agencies can be the guardian of the person in some instances and the estate in other instances. There might be a corporate guardian that was needed to manage the estate in some of those instances where the OSG couldn't serve as the guardian of the estate.
Now, if the person with the disability was high enough functioning to not need a guardian in the parent's perspective, and they're really high enough functioning, they can work directly with a professional who can help them. You know, we even have classes for different groups and people with higher functioning disabilities and can help them do their own planning. So. Any other questions, Mary?
Yeah, you had mentioned the ABLE accounts. Where do we find out more information about it? It sounds really important.
It is important. So we can send some information about that to Sue, but we are also, you know, so with the rules and things, but we are doing our next class is the ABLE class. So it is in, what
November.
is it? November. Do you have the date of the actual class? Let me see if I can find it really quickly. We are doing a class, I think it's November.
I think the 18th.
I think it's the 18th.
18th, we will have the class on ABLE. So make sure to sign in and watch for that. And we'll be recording that one as well. But it'll be the group of us again talking about the ABLE.
When another question came up, when both parents pass away and somebody is on DAC already, do their benefits automatically get increased to the highest parent's portion, or do they have to go through Social Security again?
It sometimes goes up automatically and often will, but if it doesn't, Social Security should be called. I have seen it go up automatically and I've seen it not go up automatically. So it just depends upon the process in that office.
Quite a few times during tonight's presentation, you've mentioned trustees. I don't have anyone that will serve as a trustee. What do I do?
Well, and sometimes that's true. So number one, I tell people, look outside your immediate family, but you can also use a corporate trustee. So let me tell you something that we have just, there's local corporate trustees. There are not a lot of banks and financial institutions who will do that because it is a lot. It's a very specialized field. Protected from House has recently formed a relationship with Schwab Trust Company of Delaware in order to allow us to do that. So not all Schwab Trust companies do it, not all bank trust companies do it, but we have worked a relationship with the Schwab Trust Company of Delaware, and they will do it at a very cost-effective way to be the administrative trustee for special needs trusts. Then if they need assistance, Protected Tomorrow is there to help.
Great. Unfortunately, our time has run out, so we'll have to answer your questions individually. We'd like to thank all of our presenters, Mary Ann, Joshua, Dave, Jennifer, for being with us this evening and sharing their knowledge with us. This class has been recorded for future reference and will be posted on our website. We'll be sending a link to you via email once the video has been uploaded. Thank you again for your participation. And as always, if you have any questions or if you'd like more information, please feel free to contact us at any time. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you everyone for participating, and thank you Jennifer, Joshua, and Dave for participating as well. And if you have any questions at all, please contact them. They're there to help you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.